Hey folks, welcome back from the Easter weekend. Let's get straight into the charts. It's going to be quite a busy week because it's post-Easter. A lot of things generally tend to happen in the markets pre and post-Easter, in the week before and the week after, so expect some interesting moves. Up until Easter, on the stock markets at least, we've had about 3 to 4 weeks of literal sideways movement. We've seen similar on some of the currency pairs, but we've seen gold and some of the other commodities moving around quite a lot, including Bitcoin. Now bear in mind, we're in the election year. We've got rate cuts coming up all around the world, including the US, and we've got elections in various other countries. So that's going to have all sorts of influence on the way things go, just politically, but also the frequency and the rate at which central banks around the world cut their rates. That's going to affect the markets dramatically during this year, one way or the other. We don't know how that's going to play out just yet, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of surprises along the way, and we just have to try and make the best of what we can do. In terms of the stock markets, generally I think we're going to see a correction, a pullback. We're seeing some big money leaving the market. We're seeing some readjustments. We're seeing more of a risk-on environment potentially approaching. I expect the stock markets will pull back in the next month or two and then potentially rally into the election period. The timing of it all is going to be really weird and tricky because not only do we have elections in the US and other parts of the world, including here in South Africa, actually, in my own country, in May this year, which is going to be also very interesting. But we've got the timing of rate cuts between central banks and the differences between countries, which will affect currencies, it'll affect the dollar, it'll affect the stock markets around the world. So I think it's a good time for the stock markets to pull back now, perhaps a little bit more of a rally in the dollar, excluding the dollar yen, I hope, because I'm short on that. And then as we approach the elections and as we see rate cuts being talked about more and more, or even enacted, we should see the stock markets begin to rally a bit. But ultimately, I think we're going to see a high in the market sometime this year or early next year. And I think economic pressures and the long-lasting effect of holding rates at such high levels after increasing them so dramatically and so quickly, that chicken has got to come home to roost at some stage, as does the inflationary chicken, which has got to be put to bed one way or the other. If we keep printing money and easing financial conditions, we will see inflation increase, and that's going to cause havoc around the world. The central banks have got a very tricky tightrope to walk, and we have to try and walk along with them, and as they often say, don't fight the Fed. Well, this year we've got to deal with the Fed and also elections in the US and other countries. With that all having been said, let me go through my current position. So nothing on the euro or the pound, but generally you can see the dollar is strengthening. This is the dollar index day chart, and you can see we've actually exceeded this previous swing high. We've got more resistance in the 106 region and then the 107 region above us, and we'll have to see how far the dollar can get up here before it starts moving down again and interest rate cuts start influencing currencies all around the world. At the moment, there's no sign of this reversing, so it's still bullish. My green indicators remain bullish. That means we've closed above the 20-period moving average on the day chart at least twice. We've broken above the swing high. We've got further resistance above us. If this carries on moving higher, we'll see the euro and the pound carry on further down. But let's have a look at the euro. This is an interesting chart. Look where we are on the euro. We're at the bottom of this channel. We've also got further support down here. I think the most likely route is probably a break below this swing low into the support block below us, and that would take us down into the 106s, and perhaps we'll find some support there. We'll be watching this one closely. The only currency plays that I have on at the moment, actually the dollar yen short, and there are a lot of reasons for this, including economics and the Bank of Japan and their moves regarding interest rates. What we're forming right now in this resistance block is something very similar to what happened before in February this year. We moved up sharply, went sideways for several weeks, and then sharply downwards. We've seen the same thing now, a sharp move up, moving sideways, not quite as long as this movement sideways just yet, but doing the same sort of thing. I expect that this will move down. My initial target's 145 to 146, and then much further down from there. If we switch to the week chart, you can see how far up we are. Very bullish. Potential for a triple top here. And the target all the way down here at 128 at the swing low, and where the 200-period moving average on this weekly chart will be if and when we get there. So that's my main currency play at the moment. I'm not much interested in anything else. We've been short the Swiss yen, that's worked out really well. And we've been short the euro yen, and that worked out. We took profit on the Swiss yen right at the bottom, and we took profit on the euro yen after the move down from the top down to these lows. Let's see how the currencies work out. I'm not terribly excited about getting into too many new positions on currencies at the moment. I want to see how the dollar is going to play out, and I'll be watching the dollar index very closely for a turnaround. So on NASDAQ and S&P, we're short on both of these. Generally, the picture is as I described at the beginning of the video, and we're looking for a move down and a break primarily below the 20-period moving averages. That's these green lines on these charts. There's the NASDAQ and the S&P day chart. This green squiggly line on both charts, on all the charts, in fact, is the 20-period moving average. Once we get 2 daily closes beneath the 20-period moving average, the simple 20-period moving average on the day chart, I'll be more comfortable that these are moving down. We have a rising wedge pattern on the S&P. Everyone's looking at this, so it's probably a bit too obvious. We may need to push out through the top. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping for a close beneath this trend line and the 20-period moving average, and 2 daily closes beneath there will give me more confidence on these shorts and the inclination to potentially add to these positions. At the same time, I'm short on NVDA, and that's looking like it's trying to top, but I'm also long on Apple and long on Tesla. As I've said many times before, these longs on Apple and Tesla are hedges against the shorts on NASDAQ, S&P, and NVIDIA. Not only that though, I think these are at pretty good levels, Apple and Tesla, to look to buy. We're in some reasonable profit on Tesla already, and Apple is more or less at the price that we got in at. Right, we went long on gold at the green arrow, we got out at the red arrow. You saw that yesterday. I tweeted that and I put it up in the members area. I've still actually got a tiny position on this long gold trade. I've taken most of it off. I think the danger is that we're getting very close to the top of this trend line now, and that we'll reject from there, potentially move down. It's overbought. We've had no pullbacks, no retracements. Gold doesn't move in straight lines. It's looking for a top, looking for a place to turn around, drop down a bit, pick up some more liquidity and so on. An ideal place would be the channel bottom. I don't know if we'll get that far down to 2050, but we could. But first of all, I'd be looking to rebuy back at this green arrow and the support level, and that's at around about 2150. So currently we've got 2150 roughly and 2050 as our support levels on gold. And I'll be watching this channel top right here to see if we get a good rejection from there, and potentially actually even look to sell gold for a move back down to 2150 or 2050. I've got no positions on silver, so I'm not going to waste time on that for now. So uranium, we're long on this one. This had a fantastic day yesterday. Same thing on UEC. We're long on both of these in good profit. I'm long on natural gas. I don't like this triple top. Actually, it's a quadruple top right now. But we're long from 1.76. We're at 1.83 now. So far, so good. I do not like the way this looks on natural gas, so we'll be carefully eyeing this as we carry on through this week. But the good news is that we haven't pulled back. We're above all the moving averages on the 4-hour chart. We've got green triangles beneath us, and we're holding above this support block here. If we can hold above this candle's low, and that is at 1.79, then we should be okay, and we should see a move up to $2. My first target is $2, then $2.15, then $2.40. I've got a 50% take profit at $2, 25% at $2.15, and 25% at $2.40. Whereafter, I'll consider selling natural gas for a move back down to $2. Over here is the Henry Hub day chart after the rollover. There's the rollover. That took place on Tuesday last week, the 26th of March, exactly a week ago. There's the rollover gap. And then yesterday we had a nice bullish day on the Henry Hub natural gas futures price over at NYMEX. WTI I'm short on. And you can see our prices on WTI, our short positions there and there. So we're out of the money on this one, but we're entering my next sell zone. We're not quite there yet. We've broken through the top of the channel, so that's not a good sign in the short term. We've got more resistance above us here in the 90s. I'm hoping we don't get that far and that we turn around somewhere around where we are today. At the moment, there's no sign of a turnaround, and I'm too close to my last short position to add any more at the moment. I don't want to be adding more this close to my last sell. We're only a little bit out of the money on this one, so I'll probably look to resell a little bit more at $90 thereabouts, maybe $88. I've still only got a 45% position on this. Right, and then going across to the 10-year yield. What a massive day yesterday, huge rise on the 10-year, so that's going to put pressure on stocks, going to put pressure on everything really, except for the US dollar. Again, this could support US dollar strength. That's also pushed the VIX up slightly yesterday, a little bit of a gap up. I'd like to buy the VIX if we get one more move back down into the 12s for a move back up to these highs in the 20s. If I expand this chart and switch it to a weekly chart, you can see how low we are on the VIX at the moment. Just a few years ago in 2020, the VIX spiked up at 84 and we're currently at 13. This is a good buying zone for the VIX, this green band here, somewhere between $13 and $12. But bear in mind, it is possible that the VIX could drop even lower. I don't think we're in danger of that at the moment, and I think this green band should hold. So we're looking at quite a good time to buy the VIX if we see the 10-year continue to rise, dollar continue to strengthen, and the stock markets continue to weaken. Bitcoin is just back at where we got into it. I took most of my profit on Bitcoin. You will have seen those notes and tweets. And we're right back into this buying zone, but breaking down through the channel. I've still got these 3 green blobs drawn in here where I thought we could get to before moving higher. but I'm going to have to move these along now because some time has passed. So let's just move that one to there, and that's at around about 59,000, and I'll move this one a little bit further along as well, perhaps over there somewhere, maybe a wee bit lower, and that's at around about 50 to 52,000. So I've still got a very tiny long position on Bitcoin from about 68,000. We're down at 66,000 now, and I'm not really interested in adding until we get down into some of these levels represented by these green blobs. If we do see Bitcoin coming off quite dramatically down into the low 50s, we'll probably see Coinbase and some of the other crypto stocks and ETFs and so on coming off at the same time. One quick note on the South African Rand. We've got elections coming up in May, and I can only think that any opportunities to buy either of these pairs will be good opportunities until we get to that time. This is the dollar South African Rand on the left and the pound South African Rand on the right. They're both moving into support. We've fallen down into these moving averages on the dollar Rand, and we're also nearing this rising trend line, or triangle line, I suppose you could call it. It looks like a bullish triangle or pennant, if you want to call it that, and the breakout should be to the top. I think the opportunities to buy the dollar South African Rand are around about now, about 18.8, potentially down to about 18.6, and worst case scenario about 18.1. I'll be watching all of those levels for opportunities to buy, and the same thing on the pound South African Rand. There's the 200-period moving average. We don't want to see it going below there. We don't want to see it moving down below these supports, and we're at a pretty good level right now. This green line coming down is the descending triangle, which has now been broken. We've moved above it, come back down to test it from the top. It's the perfect buying opportunity. We're now at 23.65, and I think it looks good for the pound South African Rand to buy a little bit at this level. We could drop further down into these green blocks around 23 and around 22.50. That's a possibility. But I think that weakness for the South African Rand leading up to the elections is probably the most likely scenario. Well, I hope you've enjoyed all of that. It's been quite a long video. If you did, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you have enjoyed this content, I'd love to have your subscription to the channel as well. Take care. I'll speak to you in the next one.